When my daughter-in-law told me to leave, I smiled instead of crying. I know how that sounds. It sounds like I didn't care. Or maybe that I was brave. But it was neither of those things. The smile was just a reflex. A tiny, muscular reaction to a pain so enormous my mind couldn't process it yet. It was the same kind of smile you might give if you opened a door and a wall of cold water hit you in the face. Shock. Pure, simple shock. She stood there in the doorway of what had been my home for 6 years. My son's house. My grandson's house. Her house. Her arms were crossed, not in anger, but in a firm, final sort of way. Like she was holding herself together or holding a line that could not be crossed. Her voice was quiet. Calm, even. That was the worst part. It wasn't a shout. It was a statement. "Margaret," she said, "I think it's time for you to find your own place." The world didn't shatter. It just softened. The edges of the hallway blurred. The sound of the television from the living room, where my grandson was watching cartoons, became muffled and far away. I could hear my own heart, a steady, slow drum in my ears. And then that smile. It touched my lips for just a second. A small, polite upturn. A lifetime of being told to be polite, to be gracious, rising to the surface even as my soul was sinking. I didn't ask why. In that moment, I was afraid of the answer. I was more afraid that she would have a list, a good list, of reasons that made perfect sense to everyone but me. So I just nodded. I looked past her shoulder, down the hall to where a little pair of tiny trainers were neatly placed by the shoe rack. I thought of the story I was supposed to read to him at bedtime. It was about a dragon and a knight who were secretly best friends. "All right," I heard myself say. My voice was strangely clear. "I'll start looking tomorrow." She nodded back, her expression a mixture of relief and something else, maybe guilt. She uncrossed her arms as if the difficult work was done. Then she turned and walked back towards the kitchen. The conversation was over. It had taken less than a minute. I stood there alone in the hallway. The smile was gone now. In its place was a hollow, aching stillness. I had come here to help. I had come here to be part of the family. I had come here after my husband, Thomas, passed away because the silence in our old house was too loud to bear. And now I was being asked to go back into that silence. But this time, it would be a different kind of quiet. It would be the quiet of a room that isn't yours, in a building full of strangers, away from the heartbeat of the people you love most. And the hardest part? My son, David, he was upstairs. He must have heard. The house was not that big. He must have heard her words, and he must have heard my answer. And he did not come down. His silence in that moment was the loudest sound of all. To understand that moment in the hallway, you have to go back. You have to go back to the beginning of our little family. I met Thomas when I was 19. He was the quiet boy who worked at the hardware store. He didn't have slick lines or big dreams he liked to talk about. He had kind eyes and steady hands. He could fix anything. A broken hinge, a leaky tap, a wounded bird, and later a broken heart. Our life wasn't a fairy tale. It was a simple, sturdy thing. We worked hard. We saved. We bought a small house with a garden that Thomas tended with endless patience. We wanted children, but for a long time, it was just the two of us. We made a world in that little house. A world of routines and quiet jokes and the smell of fresh paint and baking bread. Then, when I was 35, a miracle, David, our David. He was the sun around which our universe began to orbit. He had his father's calm nature and, I like to think, a little of my stubborn hope. Our family felt complete. We were a triangle, strong and balanced. Thomas taught David how to plant seeds, how to measure twice and cut once. I taught him how to make pancakes in funny shapes and how to listen for the stories in the wind on a rainy afternoon. We were not perfect parents. We worried. We made mistakes. But the love was a constant, solid presence, like the old oak tree in our backyard. David grew up. He went to university. He met Alina. I remember the first time he brought her home. She was all sharp intelligence and bright energy. She talked fast, she had opinions about everything, and she looked at David with a fierce pride that made my heart squeeze. She was everything I wasn't: confident, career-driven, modern. I was a little in awe of her, and if I'm honest, a little intimidated. But she made David happy. His eyes shone when he looked at her. That was all, Thomas, and I needed to see. They got married. They moved to the city an hour away. Our house grew quieter again, but it was a good quiet, a proud quiet. We had launched our son into his own life. Then Thomas got sick. It wasn't sudden. It was a slow, cruel fatting. First, he forgot where he put his tools. Then he forgot the names of the roses he'd planted. Then, one terrible day, he looked at me across the breakfast table and didn't know who I was. That was the day a part of me broke off and floated away, never to be found again. I cared for him at home for as long as I could. David and Alina helped, coming on weekends. But the man I loved had already left, long before his body finally let go 2 years later. After the funeral, the silence in our house was a physical thing. It sat in Thomas's empty chair. It echoed in the garage where his workbench stood, clean and unused. I could hear my own thoughts, and they were all about loss. David and Alina were worried. They visited often, but their lives were in the city. One Sunday, over lunch, David put his hand on mine. "Mum," he said, his voice gentle. "This is too big for you now. The garden, the upkeep, and you're so alone here. Why don't you come live with us?" Alina, sitting beside him, nodded. She smiled. "We've talked about it. We have the spare room. And we're thinking of starting a family soon. It would be so wonderful to have you there. To help, to be part of it all." The offer felt like a lifeline. The thought of being surrounded by life, by noise, by a family growing again, it was everything I wanted. I saw myself holding a newborn. I saw myself helping, being useful. I saw myself not being alone. So I said yes. I sold the house, the furniture, distributed a lifetime of memories among boxes and charity shops. I kept only a small trunk of precious things. It was terrifying, letting go of the home Thomas and I built. But I told myself I was trading it for a new purpose. I was moving towards love, not away from it. I moved into their bright, modern townhouse. The spare room was lovely. I set up my few things, my photos of Thomas, my favorite books. For the first few months, it was a honeymoon period. I cooked their favorite meals. I kept the house spotless while they worked. I felt needed. I felt grateful. When Alina became pregnant, my joy was boundless. I fussed over her. I knitted tiny booties, something I hadn't done in decades. We decorated the nursery together. We seemed like a perfect team. David would come home, kiss Alina, kiss my forehead, and say, "My two favorite girls." And for a while, I believed it. I believed I had found my place again. I had a son, a daughter-in-law I was growing to love, and a grandchild on the way. The emptiness Thomas left behind felt a little less sharp. I didn't know then that I was a guest, and that even the most welcome guest, if they stay too long, begins to wear out their welcome. I didn't see the tiny fractures starting to form in the foundation of our new life together. I was too busy and too happy, trying to rebuild my world inside of theirs. The change didn't come like a storm. It came like a slow shift in the weather. The air just felt different. You couldn't pinpoint the exact moment it happened. It started after Leo was born, my beautiful grandson. Holding him for the first time was a healing balm on my old heart. I promised him, silently, that I would be the best grandmother. I would be his soft place to land. Alina was a wonderful, attentive mother, but she was also exhausted, and she had very clear ideas about how things should be done. A schedule for feeding, a specific way to sterilize bottles, a particular brand of baby lotion. I had raised a child, of course, but my ways were from a different time. I believed in cuddling a baby when he cried. I believed in rocking him to sleep. Alina believed in self-soothing and strict nap times. The first time I rocked Leo to sleep in my arms instead of putting him down awake in his crib, Alina found us. She stood in the doorway, her face a mask of polite frustration. "Oh, Mum," she said. She called me Mum, which I loved, but in that moment it felt like a title, not a name. "We're really trying to get him to learn to sleep on his own. It's for his own good. I felt a flush of shame, as if I'd been caught doing something wrong. I'm sorry, I whispered, not wanting to wake the sleeping baby. He just seemed so fussy. It's okay, she said, but her tone said it was. She took Leo from me, gently but firmly, and laid him in his crib. He immediately woke and began to cry. She shushed him, patted his back, and left the room, closing the door partway. He'll settle, she said, more to herself than to me. I stood outside the nursery, listening to my grandson cry. Every wail felt like a tiny needle in my heart. My instinct was to rush in and comfort him, but it wasn't my place. This was not my child. This was her child in her house. My role was to support, not to override. It was the first time I felt the sharp edge of that distinction. Small things began to pile up, like pebbles in a shoe. I loaded the dishwasher differently than Alina liked. She would quietly, without a word, rearrange it after me. I bought the wrong type of bread, multigrain instead of sourdough. David's trying to cut down on carbs, Mum, she'd say, putting the loaf in the back of the cupboard. I told Leo silly, made-up stories. Alina would smile and say, Let's read the book, Leo. The words are important for his development. I tried to adapt. I studied the dishwasher like it was a complex puzzle. I wrote down the shopping list exactly. I stuck to the books. But with each adjustment, I felt myself growing smaller, quieter. I was trying to fold myself into a shape that fit neatly into their life, but I kept feeling my corners poke out. David was often caught in the middle. I could see it in his eyes when he came home from work. The tiredness. He'd listen to Alina talk about her day, about the baby's milestones, about a minor frustration with something I'd done. Then he'd come to me, put a hand on my shoulder and say, Don't worry about it, Mum. She's just tired. You're doing great. He was trying to be the peacemaker, but his peacemaking felt like he was just covering over the cracks, not fixing them. He didn't want to hear my side, not really. He wanted the problem to go away so he could have a peaceful evening. I understood. He was pulled between being a husband and a son, but his neutrality began to feel like a distance. A space was opening up between us, filled with unspoken things. One evening, we were all in the living room. Leo was on a playmat. I was on the floor with him, making a toy elephant walk up his little leg. He was giggling. I looked up, smiling, and caught Alina looking at us. But she wasn't smiling. She had a strange expression on her face. It wasn't anger. It was sadness, and something like resignation. What's wrong, love? David asked, noticing it too. She shook her head. Nothing, it's nice. But her voice was flat. Later, when David was putting Leo to bed, I was washing up. I heard her on the phone in the next room. Her voice was low, but I caught fragments. Just feels like it's her home, not mine sometimes. Everything I do gets. I know she doesn't mean to, but I'm the mother, you know. I stopped moving. The plate in my hand was suspended over the soapy water. My breath caught. I wasn't meant to hear this. And what I heard was a truth I had been afraid to face. I was an intrusion. My very presence, my help, my love for Leo, it was making her feel like a guest in her own home. The pebbles in the shoe weren't just bothering me. They were bothering her too, maybe even more. I didn't say anything. What could I say? I heard you on the phone. That would only make it worse. So I retreated further. I spent more time in my room. I asked permission for everything. Is it all right if I hold Leo? Would you like me to start dinner? I became a ghost of myself, polite and helpful and utterly lonely in the middle of a busy family. The tension was a third person in the house now. It sat with us at dinner. We made conversation about the weather, about the news, about Leo's latest tooth. But the real conversation, the one about me being here, hung in the air, untouched. I thought about leaving, but where would I go? I had no home anymore. The money from the sale of my house was in the bank, but the thought of finding a small flat, living completely alone again, terrified me. And more than that, leaving meant admitting defeat. It meant giving up on my family, on being a daily part of my grandson's life. So I stayed. I smiled. I helped. And I prayed that somehow the friction would wear smooth with time. But time, it seemed, was only making it worse. The space between Alina's life and mine was not shrinking. It was widening into a canyon. And I was standing on one side, smiling my polite smile, while she stood on the other, building a wall. The breaking point came on Leo's second birthday. I had been looking forward to it for weeks. Birthdays were a big deal in our family when David was little. Homemade cakes, silly decorations, the feeling of a day dedicated entirely to joy. I wanted to give Leo a piece of that. I wanted to create a memory. Alina was planning a small party for the weekend with Leo's little friends from playgroup. But the actual birthday fell on a Thursday. I asked Alina if I could make a special little tea for just us on the day. She seemed busy, distracted. "Sure, Mum," she said. "Whatever you like, just keep it simple." To me, special and simple could coexist. I decided to make a small, shaped cake, a train, because Leo loved trains. I'd use his favorite banana bread recipe, make a healthy cream cheese frosting, and decorate it with some berries. I'd make tiny sandwiches and put up a few balloons. A little celebration. The morning of his birthday, I was humming in the kitchen. Leo was clinging to my legs, excited by the activity. I let him help by putting sprinkles in a bowl. We were in our own little world of flour and laughter. Alina came down, dressed for work. She had an important meeting, she said. She kissed Leo, gave him his present, a beautiful wooden puzzle. Then she looked at the mess on the counter. The mixing bowls, the flour, the mashed bananas. "What's all this?" she asked, her voice tight. "It's for his birthday tea," I said, smiling. "I'm making a train cake, see?" I showed her the tin I'd shaped. Her face closed down. "Mum," I said, simple. "He's having a party on Saturday with cake and sugar and all of that. Today was just supposed to be normal. I don't want him overloaded with treats." "Oh, it's not sugary," I said quickly, my happiness deflating. "It's banana bread, and the frosting is just cream cheese and a tiny bit of honey. It's all good for him." "It's the principle," she said, sighing. She rubbed her forehead. "It's just, you do this. You create these extra things, these extra events. And then I feel like I have to manage it. I have to be the one who says no to more sugar later or who deals with him being overexcited. I just wanted a quiet day." Her words felt like a slap. I was just trying to make it nice," I said, my voice small. "I know you were," she said, and she did sound genuinely tired. "But nice isn't always helpful. Sometimes nice is just more work for me." She glanced at the clock. "I have to go, I'll be late." She gave Leo another quick kiss and left. The front door closed with a soft, definite click. The kitchen, so full of warm light and promise a moment before, now felt cold and messy. Leo looked up at me, his little face confused. "Mama cross?" he asked. I picked him up, hugging him close. "No, my love, Mama's just busy." But my heart was aching. All I had wanted was to create a moment of joy, and I had created a moment of conflict instead. I decided to finish the cake anyway. Maybe when she saw it, when she saw Leo's face, she'd understand. I worked quietly, my earlier joy replaced by a determined sadness. The cake turned out beautifully, a little wobbly but recognizably a train. Leo clapped his hands when he saw it. I took a picture and sent it to David. "Can't wait for tea," he texted back with a smiley face. The afternoon passed. Alina came home, still looking stressed. She saw the cake on the table with its 2 little candles ready. She didn't say anything. She just went upstairs to change. David came home and he made a big fuss over the cake. "Mum, this is amazing." He lifted Leo up to see it. For a little while, the happy feeling came back. We sat down for tea. Leo opened our small gifts. He was delighted with the little wooden train set I'd found for him. He tried to put a piece of banana bread in his toy train's carriage. We were about to light the candles when Alina's phone rang. She looked at it. "It's work, I have to take this." She got up and went into the study, closing the door. David, Leo, and I waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Leo started to get fidgety. Cake, cake, he asked. Let's just do it, David said a little impatiently. She'll understand. So we lit the candles. We sang Happy Birthday. Leo blew them out with Daddy's help. We cut the cake. It was delicious. We were just finishing our slices when Alina came out of the study. Her face was pale. She looked at the table. The extinguished candles, the cut cake, the crumbs on Leo's face. She didn't shout. Her voice was icy calm. It was the calm that comes before a freeze. You had the cake without me. You were on a call, love, David said, trying to keep his tone light. We waited a bit. Leo was getting restless. It's his birthday, she said, looking directly at me. And you had his birthday cake without his mother. Alina, don't be silly, David said, but his voice was weak. Silly, she repeated. She wasn't crying, but her eyes were bright with hurt. This is what I mean, David. This is exactly what I mean. It's not about the cake. It's about everything. It's about me coming home to a schedule I didn't plan, a cake I didn't want, and then being excluded from the moment because of work you know I can't control. She was speaking to David, but every word was aimed at the life I had created in her absence. I'm sorry, I whispered, standing up. I'm so sorry, Alina. We should have waited. It was my fault. She turned her gaze to me, and in that moment I saw it all. The years of small adjustments, the feeling of being judged, the sense that her role as mother and wife was being quietly, kindly undermined by my presence. It wasn't about the train cake. It was about the track I had unknowingly been laying straight through the heart of her family. I just wanted to help, I said, my voice breaking. I know, she said, and those 2 words held a universe of exhaustion. But you're not helping, not anymore. A terrible silence filled the room. David looked from his wife to his mother, helpless. Leo, sensing the tension, started to whimper. Alina took a deep breath. She walked over, picked up Leo, and held him close. It's okay, baby, she murmured. Then she looked at David. We need to talk, later. And she carried Leo upstairs. David sank into a chair, his head in his hands. I stood by the table, surrounded by the ruins of a birthday party. The happy train cake now looked like a monument to my failure. David, I began. Not now, Mum, he said, his voice muffled by his hands. Just not now. That night I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling. I heard the low murmur of their voices from downstairs, a discussion. Then, later, a silence heavier than any argument. I knew, even before she spoke to me in the hallway the next day, what was coming. The birthday wasn't the cause. It was the final, clear illustration of a problem that had grown too big to ignore. I had become a source of stress in the very place I had come to find peace. My love had become a burden. And so, when she stood in the doorway and told me to leave, the smile was just a mask. Behind it, my heart was finally accepting the truth it had been fighting for years. This was not my home, and trying to make it so was breaking us all apart. I moved into a small, 1-bedroom flat on the other side of the city. It was clean, modern, and very, very quiet. The first night, the silence was so absolute it roared in my ears. I missed the creak of the floorboards upstairs, the hum of the dishwasher, the sound of David's key in the lock. I missed Leo's laugh like a physical ache. David helped me move. He was quiet, subdued. He set up my furniture, the few pieces I'd bought. He hung my pictures, including one of him and Leo. We'll visit all the time, Mum, he promised, his eyes not quite meeting mine. I'll bring Leo over on weekends. Alina did not come. She sent her regards and a lovely houseplant. It was a kind gesture, but it felt formal, like a gift you'd send a colleague who was leaving. The visits started as promised. David would bring Leo every Sunday for a few hours. They were stiff, strange visits. Leo was confused by the new place. He'd wander around, touching things, asking, "Go home now." David would try to make cheerful conversation, but there was a canyon of unsaid things between us. We talked about the weather, his work, Leo's new words. We did not talk about why I was here. We did not talk about Alina. We were tiptoeing on eggshells in my own tiny flat. After a few months, the visits became less frequent. Alina's parents are visiting this weekend, David would say, or Leo's got a birthday party. Or simply, it's just a busy one, Mum, next week for sure. I understood. Life was busy. They had their own family rhythm now, without me in it. My absence, which I feared would be a gaping hole, was apparently a space that closed over quite quickly. The reality was a bitter pill. I had gone from being at the center of their daily life to being a monthly appointment on a calendar. I was lonely, terribly, profoundly lonely. But a strange thing began to happen in that loneliness. With no one to cook for, no schedule to follow, no one's preferences to consider but my own, I started to remember who I was. Not David's mother or Alina's mother-in-law or even Thomas's wife. Just Margaret. I started taking walks in the nearby park. I joined a gentle gardening club for seniors. I began reading novels again for hours at a time. Slowly, painfully, I began to build a life that was entirely my own. It was a small life, a quiet life, but it was mine. There was a certain bleak freedom in it. I thought about Alina often, at first with hurt and confusion. But as the sharp pain dulled into a constant ache, I began to see things from her side. I saw a young mother trying to establish her family, her rules, her identity. And I saw me, a well-meaning but constant presence, a living memory of how things used to be done. I was a ghost of the past, inhabiting her present. No wonder she felt crowded. No wonder she felt she had to fight to be the mother in her own home. One afternoon, about a year after I'd moved out, I was in the park. I saw a young woman with a toddler having a meltdown. The mother looked exhausted, embarrassed. She was trying to reason with the screaming child. Without thinking, I walked over. "I'm sorry to intrude," I said softly. The mother looked up, defensive and tired. "I just wanted to say it gets easier, and you're doing a wonderful job." The woman's face crumpled for a second, then she gave me a watery smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "It's just so hard sometimes." "I know," I said. And I did. I thought of Alina in those early days, fiercely trying to do everything right. I wished I had said those words to her. Not offered advice, not taken over, just offered kindness. That was the day I started writing a letter. Not to send, just to put my thoughts down. I wrote to Alina. I told her I was sorry. Sorry for all the times I overstepped. Sorry for not seeing that my help felt like interference. Sorry for making her feel like a stranger in her own life. I wrote that I loved her, for loving my son and for being a wonderful mother to Leo. I wrote that I understood why she asked me to leave. I wrote page after page, and when I was done, I put it in a drawer. It was just for me, a way to let go of the regret. 2 more years passed. Leo was 5, starting school. My visits were now once every 6 weeks or so. They were pleasant. Leo called me Grandma Maggie and told me about his friends. David looked older, more settled. He seemed happier, the tense line gone from his shoulders. Their family, without me in it, was thriving. It was the final proof I needed, though it was a proof that broke my heart a little. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door, and there stood Alina. She was alone. No David, no Leo. She was holding a small bunch of daffodils, and she was soaking wet from the rain. Her hair was plastered to her forehead. She looked nervous. My heart jumped into my throat. "Alina, is everything all right? Are David and Leo?" "They're fine," she said quickly. "Everyone's fine. I was in the area. Can I come in?" Of course, I said, stepping back. "You're drenched." She came in, leaving small puddles on the floor. I took her coat, got her a towel. She stood in the middle of my small living room, looking around. It was the first time she'd been here. "It's nice," she said. "Cozy." "Would you like tea?" I asked, my hands fluttering nervously. Yes, please. I busied myself in the kitchenette, my mind racing. Why was she here, after all this time? I brought the tea out. We sat on my small sofa, a silence between us that was thick with the past. She took a sip, then put the cup down. She looked at her hands. Margaret, she began, then stopped. She took a deep breath. I need to apologize. I was so stunned I couldn't speak. The way I asked you to leave, it was cruel. It was abrupt and it was unkind. I've played that moment over in my head 1,000 times. I should have talked with you, not at you. I should have been honest about my feelings long before it got to that point. I was just so overwhelmed and so afraid. Tears were in her eyes now. I was afraid I was a bad mother. I was afraid I wasn't good enough. And every time you did something so easily, so naturally, it felt like proof that I was failing. I saw your love for Leo as a judgment on me. It was, I know that now. It was just love, but I couldn't see it then. She looked up at me, her face raw with emotion. I took my own insecurities out on you, and I used my home as a weapon. I told you to leave your home because I felt like you were invading mine. It was the worst thing I've ever done, and I am so sorry. Tears were streaming down my own face now. All the hurt, the loneliness, the confusion of the last few years rose up in my throat. But with it came a wave of something else. Understanding. Compassion. Oh, Alina, I said, my voice trembling. I'm sorry, too. I'm sorry I was so blind. I came into your home wanting to help, but I never stopped to ask what help you actually wanted. I just assumed my way was the right way. I was trying to fill my own emptiness, and I didn't see that I was taking up space that belonged to you. I am so sorry for all the pressure I put on you, without even knowing I was doing it. We were both crying now. Not the loud, dramatic sobs of movies, but the quiet, releasing tears of long-held pain. You were never a bad mother, I said, reaching out and taking her hand. It was cold from the rain. You are a brilliant mother. Leo is kind and curious and happy because of you. And David, he loves you so much. I should have told you that every day. Instead, I just added to your worries. She squeezed my hand. I miss you, she whispered. Leo misses you. David, he tries to be strong, but he misses you terribly. We all do. We just didn't know how to fix it. There's nothing to fix, I said, and I realized I meant it. This distance, it was painful, but maybe it was necessary. Maybe we both needed to stand on our own ground for a while to see each other clearly. She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't want you to be a monthly visit anymore, Margaret. I want you to be his grandma. I want you to be part of our lives, on our terms. New terms, yours and mine. Not as a live-in helper, but as family who visits. Who has sleepovers with Leo. Who comes for Sunday dinner, if you want that. I looked at this strong, beautiful, vulnerable woman in front of me. The daughter-in-law I had been intimidated by, had hurt, and had missed so much. The mother of my grandson, my son's love. I want that more than anything, I said. And for the first time in years, I smiled at her. And it wasn't a mask, it was real. That apology in my little flat, with the rain against the windows, didn't erase the past. The hurt was real. The lonely years were real. You can't undo that. But what an apology can do is change the future. It can build a new bridge over the old canyon. Our relationship now is different. It's more honest. We talk, really talk. Alina will call me and say, Leo has a school play next week, we'd love you to come. But just a heads up, we're keeping the weekend calm, otherwise no big meal. And I understand, it's not a rejection, it's a boundary, and I can respect that. I go to their house for dinner once a week. I'm a guest and I leave when the evening is done. It's bittersweet sometimes walking out that door, but it's right. That is their home. And I have a home now too. A small, quiet place that is all my own, where I have my routines, my books, my peace. And they come here. Leo loves my little balcony where we grow tomatoes in pots. He calls it Grandma's garden. Sometimes he has sleepovers. We build forts with blankets and read stories, silly, made-up ones and books with words for his development. We do both. David seems lighter. The man caught in the middle is gone. He can just be a son and a husband without the two roles tearing him apart. He hugs me longer when he says goodbye. I learned a hard lesson, one that took me most of my life to understand. Love doesn't mean merging. It doesn't mean losing yourself inside someone else's life, even if that life belongs to your child. True love, the kind that lasts and doesn't smother, needs space to breathe. It needs respect for the lines between one life and another. I thought I was building a family by moving in. But sometimes, you hold a family together by knowing when to take a step back. By giving the people you love the room to grow their own way, even if it's different from your way. My love for David and Leo didn't change, but the shape of it had to change. It had to transform from being the center of their home to being a warm, welcoming light next door. And in doing so, I found myself again. I found Margaret. I still miss Thomas every day, but the silence in my flat is no longer frightening. It's just quiet, and in that quiet, I can hear my own heart. I can hear the memory of my grandson's laugh from last weekend. I can hear the echo of my daughter-in-law's voice saying, "I miss you." Our family is broken, yes, but broken things can be repaired. The cracks might still show if you look closely. Those cracks are our history. They are the proof that we cared enough to hurt each other and that we loved enough to try again. The repair, the gold filling in the cracks, that's the choice we make every day now. To forgive, to understand, to love from a place of respect, not possession. So if you are in a season of tension with someone you love, a parent, a child, a friend, remember my story. Remember the birthday cake train that derailed. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do, the most loving thing, is to create a little space. To breathe. To see each other from a new angle. It might hurt for a while. The silence might be loud. But on the other side of that silence, there might be a rainy Tuesday, and a knock at the door, and a chance to build something new, something stronger, because it's built on truth and on the humble, powerful words, "I was wrong. I am sorry. I love you." Family isn't about sharing a roof. It's about sharing the heart. And a heart, I've learned, has many rooms. Enough for all of us in our own time, in our own way.